Welcome to the third module in our series for instructional assistants presented by the El Dorado County Office of Education. This module will give you some supports and strategies for working with students who demonstrate unwanted behaviors.
As part of this web module series, we have incorporated a processing guide for you to use to take notes, write down your reflections on your learning, and jot down additional questions you may have as you think about the students you support as an instructional assistant. To access the processing guide, please take a moment to access our Padlet, which we will show you on the next slide.
A Padlet is an online filing cabinet that provides access to resources. This Padlet will be updated as appropriate. Please pause the module and access the Padlet in order to download the processing guide under Module 3 heading prior to continuing with this training. As we go through the slides, feel free to pause the slideshow as appropriate to give yourself time to take notes, jot down your questions, reflections, and wonderings. There will also be a visual icon in the bottom left corner which will indicate a Padlet opportunity on the slides that relate directly to the processing guide. This slide doesn't have a question that relates to the processing guide, but rather this is a time to download the processing guide from the Padlet. Remind yourself that the only thing you can truly control is you and your reaction to what the world throws at you. As we embark on the Behavior Basics learning opportunity, it is important to keep in mind that we can truly only control ourselves. Why is this quote and this thought important? Trying to control another person creates a power struggle. Rather than engaging in power struggles, we should provide opportunities for students to make positive choices, even during a crisis.
All behavior is communication. Our jobs are to figure out why the behavior is happening and to teach a student what expected, acceptable behavior looks like. Figuring out why a student is acting a certain way can be a trial and error process. It is important, as an instructional assistant, to follow the student's behavior plan. We will discuss behavior plans further in another module. We should also communicate with the important stakeholders involved with the student. This could include the education specialist or special education teacher, behaviorists, and any other relevant service providers. It also includes the general education teachers as appropriate. The processing guide icon is on this slide, so please take a moment to refer to the processing guide and answer the question.
In a school setting, there are many factors that can influence a student's behavior and impact how they behave in a school setting. This visual helps us consider some of the things that might be happening in a student's life that we don't see, such as with the image of the iceberg. During the school day, we may see what's above the water, but when a child leaves school, all the things that happen to them may be under the water and not visually available to us. However, the things that we don't see can still impact a student's ability to access their education in an appropriate, socially acceptable manner. We call these things that happen outside of a school day or below the water precipitating factors. On the next slide, we will discuss precipitating factors in further detail. For your reference, there is a copy of this image available on the Padlet, so you can see it in better detail.
Understanding the function of behavior. Precipitating factors. A precipitating factor is defined as a cause of behavior over which a staff member has little or no control. What are some examples of precipitating factors that your students may be experiencing? What are some thoughts that come to mind? These factors may include not eating before coming to school, an unstable home environment, not taking medication prior to coming to school. These are just a few thoughts, but the list is really endless. How did you gain information about those factors? Typically, we learn of these factors from the student themselves, perhaps the case manager or other staff that work with the student. As a reminder, if you recall from Module 1, FERPA still applies as you gain information about a student. If a precipitating factor is one we have little or no control of and happens outside of the school day, why should we have to consider precipitating factors in a school setting? Great question. Because precipitating factors impact a child during the school day and across multiple environments. Therefore, it is important for a school team to collaborate to bring all the pieces together to support a student with behavior concerns. Collaboration with your supervisor will be important to ensure everyone is working together and using the same methods of support. You may wonder why there is a picture of a soda can on this slide. Think of the soda can as a student, and every shake is a precipitating factor. Your simple instruction or directive may pop open that can and cause the explosion. Even though we didn't see all the shaking happening, it still happened and it's still impacting the student in the school setting. Please take a moment to answer the processing guide question for this slide. Understanding the function of behavior, the ABCs. Let's take a closer look at the function of behavior. A is antecedent, the events, action, or circumstances that occur prior to a behavior. The B, behavior, is the specific behavior that we can observe from the student. The C is consequence. This is actually related to the events, action, or circumstances that follow the behavior. Behavior does not occur in isolation, and it's important to understand the ABCs of behavior before utilizing preventative techniques or interventions with a student. The ABCs of behavior are the antecedent, behavior, and consequence. These words will help you understand the function or the why of the behavior the student is showing you and help a student's team focus or direct your strategy or interventions. On the processing guide, please complete the question for this slide.
Let's take another look at the ABCs of behavior. So for A, the teacher gave direction to start an assignment. That happened right before the behavior. That was the antecedent. The B is the behavior, and the student yells, "Yeah, right," and puts their head down. That's the observable behavior that we saw from the student. The C is the consequence. This is where the student was sent to the school office and leaves their work at their desk. But why does the student act this way? In order to dive into the why, we're going to take a look at some examples or functions of behavior that might be contributing to a student's behavior on the next slide. Also, as a reference, there are ABC charts on the Padlet, as well as additional resources available to you. These are the 4 broad areas of behavior that could be contributing to a student's function, or the why of their behavior. Avoid, escape, or protest, obtain something, attention seeking, and sensory stimulation. We're going to break these down further on the next couple of slides to give you more information. Please take a moment to complete the processing guide question related to this slide. The first possible function of behavior is to avoid, escape, or protest a non-preferred activity, task, or setting. This may be related to anxiety or a perceived lack of control. In this case, it's important to consider whether academic, social emotional, or executive functioning skill deficits are contributing to the behavioral challenges. Oftentimes, replacing this function may require frequent breaks or positive reinforcement. The second function on this slide is to obtain a preferred item or activity. For example, if a child's crying behavior allows access to a break time to play on the computer or watch a movie. Children whose behavior is seeking to obtain something may benefit from learning to ask for a preferred item appropriately and building skills to delay gratification or learning to wait. The next function is attention seeking. The child may be seeking either positive or negative attention. This could include looking to you for frequent directions to get back to work, or having you stand next to them while they complete a task. Sometimes negative attention is more often immediate and therefore reinforced more. The example is a teacher is much more likely to pay attention to a student if they are calling out or distracting their neighbors, and less likely to pay attention to a student who is working quietly and cooperatively. Lastly, behavior may serve as sensory stimulation in order to meet physiological sensory needs. Sensory behavior may include things such as tapping, rocking, standing, swaying, fidgeting, pacing, or what we sometimes refer to as stimming. These are just a few sensory stimulation behaviors you might see in your classroom. First, it's important to ask if the behavior is simply irritating to those around the student or if it truly warrants intervention. If the behavior is not significantly impacting the student or others from remaining on task, you may just simply allow the behavior to continue. Additionally, you could seek less distracting means of getting those sensory needs met for the student, such as allowing a student to stand while they work, listen to music on headphones, sit on a bouncy yoga ball, or hold a fidget while they read. Prevention is the best medicine. If we can prevent unwanted behavior, then we can count ourselves as successful in making positive change for a student. Prevention tips and tricks for interactions with staff. Seek opportunities to collaborate for strategies with the team members that support the student. This may include face-to-face conversations, utilizing a shared Google Doc, which provides a list of strategies and a place to input observations and data related to each of the strategies that you're using. This could be a checklist that is kept in a secure location accessible to team members. Collaborate with staff from last year about what worked and what didn't. This is not a breach of FERPA as long as you are gathering information and asking questions, but not providing information. Be aware of assumptions and descriptions of the student and support in language shifts. When we think about how we refer to students or people in general, we shouldn't think of people as disabled, but rather someone who has a disability or a challenge. Rather than saying an autistic student, we should say a student with autism. This type of language shift is referred to as person-first language. We put people first and the challenge or disability second. Always include your supervisor and/or appropriate team members as you are supporting the plan, and you can provide input, but ultimately you are not creating the plan. Please take a moment to complete the processing guide question related to this slide. Prevention tips and tricks for interactions with self. Be kind and patient with yourself, and make it a priority to engage with self-care. Remember, challenging behavior is challenging. It is hard work, and we need to make sure we are utilizing the team working with the student to share frustrations and successes, even the small ones. Stay positive. Teaching is your strength, and remember that we can only control our own actions. Stay focused on the function of the behavior to avoid taking the actions of the student personally. Have a plan for yourself to take care of your needs, and remember to engage in intentional self-care. Take a couple of minutes to complete the processing guide question related to this slide.
Prevention tips and tricks. Interactions with students. Seek out and utilize rapport building opportunities. What are their interests? What commonalities do you have with your students? Be a talent scout. This simply means find out what each student is good at and let their talent shine. Every person brings gifts and talents to our world, but each of us is unique and can be good at different tasks. Find out what the student you support are good at and allow their talents to shine. Remember, their talents may not be academically based. It may be related to cooking, observing nature, sports, music, video games, having good manners. Think outside the academic world. Use start requests instead of stop. Ask for the behaviors you want the student to show you. If a student is doing something they shouldn't be, simply telling them to stop doesn't tell them what they should do. For example, asking a student to stop tapping their pencil on their desk doesn't tell them what they should be doing instead. However, if I ask the student to put their name on their assignment, then they know what I want them to be doing. Utilize strategic interventions. Examples of this are visual schedules, behavior contracts, reinforcement systems, check-in and check-out, or what is sometimes referred to as SECO. On the next slide, there will be a location for you to explore additional resources on our website that will provide you additional strategies for using with your students. Please take a moment to complete the processing guide question for this slide.
On our EDCA website, we have an online learning center. In our online learning center, we have a section called Strategic Behavioral Intervention Series. This supports some of the strategies that we listed on the last slide, as well as others. We encourage you to explore this series further to better understand specific interventions that may be used in supporting the students you work with. As an additional opportunity, we've added this information to the Padlet. Behavioral interventions, filling our toolbox. I like this visual as just a reminder that we're constantly adding different techniques, strategies, and skills to our toolbox. In this particular module, we're focusing on the prevention and intervention strategies. However, as this series continues, we will continue to add various interventions to our toolbox. Let's add some prevention techniques to our toolbox. Anticipate student needs based on data. This allows you to spend time proactively rather than reactively. Prevention can soften triggers or make the behavior irrelevant. Examine and alter the environment to set the student up for success. What environmental triggers have you noticed and collected data on? Elements of the daily routine where there are challenges and struggles. Can we eliminate those? Are there peers or staff members that tend to set the student off that we could move the student or alter the staff member engaging with the student? Overstimulation. Is there just too much happening for the student in this particular environment? Looking and examining the environment can help us set the student up for success. Plan staff responses to behavior. Involve home environment in preventative techniques. Allowing your supervising teacher to look at what works in the home setting may be helpful in the school setting. All of these prevention interventions should be done in close collaboration with your supervising teacher. Please take a moment to complete the processing guide question. Let's add some additional resources to your toolbox by looking at interactions. We have talked about building rapport and being a talent scout on previous slides in this series, but it is worth noting again. Allowing a student to shine is a way to build rapport. I had a student that wanted to tell jokes to his friends, so we actually built into his positive reward system a time for him to share jokes in front of the class. This helped his classmates see his talents and enjoy his sense of humor. Practice refraining from stop, don't, and no. Remember to ask the student for what you want to see from them. Here's an example. Please look with your eyes, put your hands by your side. Instead of don't touch. We're getting the same outcome, but with a positive statement rather than a negative one. Plan your response to the student's behavior. Ask yourself, how am I going to respond when the student does X? If you have a plan, then you're prepared to stay calm and avoid the power struggle. Remind the student what you expect from them. Often, making a positive statement to a student, such as, "I'm so glad to see that you have your pencil out ready to write your name on your paper," or reminding them that there is help available should they want to raise their hand and ask for it, and then just simply walking away can be a great strategy on how to interact with a student. If planned ignoring is a strategy used with a student, that will come from the direction of a behaviorist or your supervising teacher, since this is effective only if the function or the why of the behavior is caused by a desire for attention. Make multiple attempts in order to shift the interaction. Often things get worse before it gets better, so perseverance is key. We have a few more interactions that you can add to your toolbox. You may have heard the phrase, "be a duck." This means to appear calm on the surface, just like a duck appears calm on top of the water, even though underneath the water they're working really hard. The students don't need to know how hard you are working. Appear calm in a stressful moment. Interactions with staff. Collaborate for support. We can't make positive changes if we are working alone. Again, be aware of our own assumptions and descriptions of the students when talking with others. We should always remain professional in our communications and have a positive regard for others. Support others in the language shift and model person-first language. Interaction with self. Be kind and patient with yourself. Remember, challenging behavior is challenging. Stay positive. Give yourself some grace. Have a plan for taking breaks. Include administrators or supervisors in the planning. Please take a moment to complete the processing guide related to this slide. The kids who need the most love will ask for it in the most unloving of ways. Do you agree? Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. These are quotes that we want to leave you with as we close out this module. Thank you for making a difference in the lives of the students you support. Without you, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Thank you for participating with the Instructional Assistant web module on behavior basics. Please take a few minutes to jot down any follow-up questions or wonderings you might have on your processing guide.